Apparently Diana's doing cameos now. Here's a look at the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Shazam Fury of the Gods Wonder Woman. From Amazon princess to the world's greatest warrior, Wonder Woman is at the height of her power, but living a quiet life as a Smithsonian curator Diana Prince. Her compassion for mankind is strong despite man's flaws. Now she must again draw her incredible strength, courage, and wisdom. Gonna get going on this review of another Gal Gadot, but before we do that, let's first thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys, yes, who were actually kind enough to provide this sample of the Shazam Fury of the Gods Wonder Woman that we could have a look at in this review. Grabbing, though, the tape measure, as we always do, just to see how tall the figure stands. Going to start things first in inches. Wonder Woman stands at 7¼ inches in height, or the figure is going to be about 18½ centimeters tall. And seeing as she does show up in a Shazam movie after all, here's what the figure looks like with the earlier looked at Zachary Levi Shazam. In this case, you can actually see that Wonder Woman's about standing the same height as Shazam that we looked at earlier. Wonder Woman also did make an appearance in an earlier released figure. Here's what the figure looks like with that. And you probably can already see that not only have they changed the skin tone of the newer one, but she's a lot more muscular in the legs. And also, just to free up a little bit of space, I will need to free up a little bit of space. Let's also bring in, not knocking over any of the figures in the process, we'll also look at the golden armor Wonder Woman. There we go. There's all the Wonder Woman that we have gotten so far from DC Multiverse and the folks over at McFarlane Toys. Joining her on her journey, the figure comes included with a display stand, a trading card, and accessories tallying 3. First, the figure comes included with a display stand. Not really much to report here. It's the same circular stand that we've always gotten before. Just want to bring in another stand that you can see. From time to time, you can see that the plastic that they're using does sometimes show up a little bit lighter. This is Wonder Woman's. This just happens to be a random DC Multiverse figure we looked at in an earlier review, but you can see that this one's a little bit darker than this one. No harm, no foul. There's a DC logo sizzled branded down below, and of course there's one neighboring peg up to the far corner that's going to plug in to either one of Gal's feet. Put that down. The figure comes also included with a really nice trading card. I like the look of this trading card quite a lot. Not using necessarily source material. Source material would be, of course, Shazam. But instead, rather, we're getting treated to sort of an illustration of Wonder Woman pulled from maybe the pages of a DC comic. Down below, in this case, it says Wonder Woman, Shazam Fury of the Gods. And then flip this around, of course. The real name is Diana Prince, with a very easy to digest. You can sit down for probably 15 minutes and chew through this if you'd like. Or if it happens to be the case you just don't want to read it, I don't blame you. It happens to be the same thing I read at the beginning of the review. You're welcome. Or you're welcome. Going to put that to the side. The figure also comes included with 3 accessories, mentioned already. The figure comes included with 2 variations of lasso. One lasso is a little bit longer. This one is going to be one for more dynamic poses. This can fit into her hand, though, to be fair, it doesn't fit really well at all. The hands are very wide of a grip, and unfortunately, just the lasso just does not sit well in there. You can kind of cheat by taking the longer strand, the little end strand, and sort of combining that up with the one in front of it to give you a little bit extra width for her to hold on to. Again, like the lasso, short of maybe heating the hand, I mean, again, probably taking that little excess trail on the end of it may help to just kind of help her holding it, the lasso. But it's going to flop around a little bit unless you maybe heat the hand and sort of just squeeze in her grip. So she's got a little bit more of a narrower grip. The figure also comes included, actually just before we do that, I did want to bring in this Wonder Woman a couple of times already. This is the one that happened to come include with the earlier looked at Wonder Woman. You can see that the lasso, not only this one is a little bit more gold, but it's also been curled, and not just by the time it's been sitting in a baggie. It, I think, came out of the packaging looking like this. So if you prefer to one a little bit more compact, you can always really use the one that came included with the other Wonder Woman, but it looks like they're very similar. Obviously, one's a little bit darker of a color, and obviously the shape is going to be a little bit different too. The figure also comes, speaking of lassos, also comes with a lasso of truth that actually is shaped like a figure 8 or infinity. You can take this one, and she has a holster located on the side here that you simply just loop that on there. A nice way to display it. Although it wouldn't make much sense at all to actually have her displayed with a lasso in her hand and then a lasso down below there. That's continuity. You're going to have to make sure that you ensure that when you have these figures on display. One of your friends who's very meticulous about that kind of thing may walk over to your shelf and say, hey, wait a minute, your Wonder Woman has 2 lassos of truth. You may have to then escort them out of your collection room. This lasso of truth bears some striking likeness to the original one that we got before. I'll just flip this around so you guys can see. Maybe it's a different mold. It looks to be the same mold. Obviously, this one is just a little bit more gold. This one almost has more of a silverish gold coloring. But it's exactly the same, it seems, at least. The figure also then comes included with an accessory that, well, she can't wear, but she can carry. And while it may sound like I'm spinning riddles, figure comes included with a golden tiara. The tiara doesn't actually fit onto her head, which initially I may have thought would have been the case. I thought perhaps there may have actually been some allotted slices, little slits on the side of her hair. And I suppose if you probably could maybe pry this a little bit away from her head to legitimately fit the tiara into her head. It does seem like it has the potential to fit in there if you wanted it to. Again, you just have to pry the hair away from her head. But I don't think it's really the plan that McFarlane had in mind when it came to this particular figure. It is possible, though. I'm not going to sign off on it. I'm not going to sign off on it, but I'm going to say it's doable if you were to be able to pry the hair just a little bit away from the head. You could then fit the tiara in there. More, the tiara is actually designed to be displayed in her hand. And again, she kind of carries this around and uses it as a weapon. The tiara, like the lasso, does not fit well at all in her hands. The trick I found, at least, is you'll notice that her pointer finger is separate from all the rest of the family members. You can actually take the tiara and just fit that into her hand, and then take the little space that's provided here between her fingers and just sort of wedge the tiara in there. So she is actually holding it without actually holding it. Look at this guy spinning riddles again. It does an okay job of her holding it, but again, like, the grip really isn't properly representing to hold anything small like this. And again, if you're not too careful, of course, you're going to also lose it as well. I'm going to see if I can maybe pry, again, on this side, if you just pry the hair just enough away from her head, maybe you might be able to, again, I'm not going to sign off on it. But I think for all intents and purposes, you may be able to get the tiara in there. Leave it with me. I'm going to work away at it. That's all it for the accessories that come included with the figure. Now getting a closer look at Gal Gadot. Or is it Gal Gadot? I think she is actually said on record it's Gal Gadot. Anyways, though, head sculpt wise, I think this one actually is better than the one that we got before. I think it bears more resemblance to Gal than maybe the earlier looked at Wonder Woman, which we can obviously bring in here for comparisons. Yeah, the earlier Wonder Woman was fine for its time, and it still is a fine looking figure, but I think the one that we get here from Shazam looks a superior Wonder Woman, if you ask me. The head sculpts are brand new, so this one obviously isn't going to be the same one that we got before. And again, I think it bears a much stronger likeness to the actress myself. You can see that she does have a little bit of rouge there on her cheeks, and for some reason, they also gave her a little bit of rouge on the top of her forehead. It's about the only thing that's a little jarring when it comes to the paint, because if they had not put that at the top, I think the head sculpt would have been fine. The skin coloring, as you can see, is different from one another. She seems to be sharing a lot of the same obvious things, like limbs, for example. This limb seems to be the same as the one next to it, even with the gauntlet bracelet down below. The coloring, obviously, is a little bit more almost off yellowish on this Wonder Woman, without describing it as being jaundice. And then this one is a little obviously too pale. The bodice, or the top of her uniform suit that she wears, seems to, again, being shared from one to the other, with this one having a lot more red being used, and this one seeming to have a little bit more orange tint. Gold is also represented the exact same way, although, again, like this one looks like it's a little bit lighter of a gold. This one seems a little more of a yellowish gold. And, of course, I can continue the trend looking at the skirts. They seem to be the same. The sculpting seems to be identical from front to back until you get to the legs. Wonder Woman's not been missing leg day. If you look at the two legs, she's definitely a lot more muscular in the newer release. I would almost even argue the point she looks a little more muscular than Gal Gadot herself. This one definitely had just more straight legs. They have given a little more definition. I say a little bit. They've given her a lot more definition. And when we then look at the boots also look like possibly they may be the same ones, although unfortunately it looks like the paint got a little bit less added here on these boots. Here you would have had the black straps, and you actually would have had like the bear skin peeking out underneath it. Instead, rather, they just sort of painted everything the same red. And even like when you look at her footwear too, the feet look more to be like boots in this release, and they actually look more like shoes on the original release. One thing I also did want to point out too is looking at the joints here for the wrists. The joints, what they ended up doing here for the original Wonder Woman is they painted the glove, and then they continued the same coloring into the wrist peg. For this Wonder Woman, while they did paint the glove, sure, they actually just left behind the plastic, the skin-toned plastic, so it does look a little jarring. It doesn't look consistently or a continuation of the same color. Of the two, I certainly do prefer this newer release, short of, again, just sort of, I'm going to still work on way on that hair and see if I can get the tiara actually in there. But overall, I think this is the better looking Wonder Woman. Even if you didn't like the Shazam Fury of the Gods, and you just wanted to get an updated Wonder Woman to go along with the rest of your league, I think I would much rather recommend going with this one versus the one that we got before. For the articulation on Wonder Woman, now the head's going to be very limited because simply, again, she has such long locks here. The long locks do prevent the hair from actually, or head from really rotating as well as it could. Head rotates back and forth. You can hinge it up only just by a little bit, and you can have it looking down a lot better. Arms do hinge out the same as before. There's also the little socket joint on the inside to conceal the joint for her shoulders. You can take those arms, rotate them all the way around. That's the same on both the sides, obviously. And while not getting the shoulder all hung up here, the figure does have a bicep swivel. The figure does possess, like the one before, a double hinge on the elbow. And the hands also rotate all the way around. Upper torso for Wonder Woman is actually consisting of two parts. So you have this part that's attached via ball joint. Hinging it obviously a little too far back. It looks not only like her stomach has a mouth, but also leaves a big gap behind. It actually kind of looks like a bullfrog. Yeah, you can rotate the torso back and forth, up and down. She does also have a secondary ball joint just below the belt. Speaking of belts and the skirting here, that she does have ratcheted joints once again, and the coloring that they did use for the joints noticeably are different from the colors of her thighs, but really when you're ever going to look at a figure like this, and short of me probably doing it here on YouTube, it's probably the only time you ever end up seeing that. Legs go forward, yes, the legs go back, sure. The figure does have a mild swivel at the top of the thigh. Figure possesses a double hinge on the knee. And again, she has the articulation in the ankle where it counts. There's also an ankle rocker and toe articulation as well. Nice overall looking Wonder Woman. If you can get away from the idea that your Wonder Woman always has to have a tiara, I think actually this one fits the bill rather nicely for the ones that you can display along with your Justice League members. And again, just to bring back in the original Wonder Woman to see how far we've come. While I did like the original one, I think even in the review of that one, I may have even made mention that her hair was a little too light of a brown. This one gives you definitely a more darker Gal Gadot color scheme, certainly when it comes to her skin tones as well as her hair. And while it looks like the bodies are very much the same, almost identical really from like the waist up, it's the waist down, it's the legs that definitely have been defined, maybe the best way to describe it, defined a little bit more on the newer release. She's definitely been not missing leg day. I wish I could have said the same for the original release. Yes, with a little bit of convincing, you can get the tiara attached onto Wonder Woman's head. It just involves you really prying the hair on either side away from her face, and there's enough of a gap space that you can then take the sides of the tiara and sort of just cram it in there. And it holds it fine. I mean, I think for right now, while I like the idea that the tiara is something that's loose that she could use then as a weapon, I know I'm just going to only ultimately lose it. And if anything, I prefer really my Wonder Woman to have the tiara on her head. So I might just keep it on her head for right now with maybe the plan that down the road, if I want to take it off, it's there. I don't have to start looking around on the floor. Where did I leave the tiara? Never want to have ever a case where you wake up one day and you're like, where did I leave my tiara? Nice looking figure though. And I think where they've updated this figure is where it counts. The skin coloring, first of all. The other one was a little too pale for my liking, not to mention the lighter coloring of her hair didn't, I think, work well for Gal Gadot Wonder Woman, that I think this one does it just a little bit better. It's not perfect. There are a few little areas where definitely paint got overlooked. The straps on the sides of her boots, for example. Her boots look a lot more like boots this time around, and not necessarily like armor plates that the original costume did convey. The suit itself seems identical. The body, the top part of the body, well, more so, is exactly the same that the one we looked at before. And again, short of just changing out the thighs, changing out the head sculpt, and improving the paint, I think you get a better looking Wonder Woman than the earlier one that we looked at before. This is not going to be one necessarily that's going to be displayed on the shelf with Shazam. No. But instead, this is the Wonder Woman I'm going to be putting on display with the rest of the league. Retiring, I think, finally the other Wonder Woman that I had on display this whole time. Because while, again, it was a good Wonder Woman for its time, I hate to say it's now been replaced with the more superior one that we're getting here from Shazam, Fury of the Gods. It's somewhat ironic, the fact that Shazam, Fury of the Gods, which I thought wasn't a great movie, ended up delivering a better-looking Shazam and a better-looking Wonder Woman. But what do you guys think of Wonder Woman from Shazam, Fury of the Gods? Let me know down below in the comment section. Is this a figure you've already picked up? If not, is this a figure that you could see yourself picking up? And once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide the sample of the Shazam Fury of the Gods Wonder Woman that we could have a look at in this review. Speaking of reviews, if you don't mind me saying this, if you enjoyed the one that you just finished watching, why not throw it a like? If you guys are loving the content, you guys are seeing it on board to see more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. FYI, we're also going to be looking at some more DC Multiverse stuff coming in the pipeline, so if that's the kind of thing you like, come back to this channel for, come back to this channel, because we're going to be looking at some more DC Multiverse stuff. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.